Hello, welcome back to the History Geek Teacher vlog. My name is Eric Langhorst. You're watching episode number 10, and the topic today is resources to teach the 2016 presidential election. So we are currently within 40 days of the presidential election, an election cycle that it seems like has gone on forever. And that means teachers around the country are beginning to formulate lesson plans and deciding exactly how they want to teach the 2016 election. From time to time, I'm asked to write for various publications. One publication that I've written for several times over the years is School Library Journal. And back in 2008, they had me do an article about resources that teachers could use to teach the election that year. I did that for them again in 2012. And recently, this past fall, they asked me to write one for 2016. So I wrote an article that featured some of the tools. There's a wide variety of tools out there, but I picked some of the best tools and some of the ones that work in my own specific classroom. And that came out as a digital article online a couple weeks ago, and the link for that is down below. It's also going to be in their print edition coming up this next month, but I wanted to do kind of a quick recap on the blog and show you just a couple of the tools that might help you teach the presidential election in 2016. The first that I wanted to mention was C-SPAN's Classroom Campaign 2016. Now, an advantage here is they've got a bunch of lessons up here where you can get a complete lesson together, or you can go to the table of contents and just focus on something that you might be looking for a civics class or maybe an AP class. So for example, one thing that we talk about quite a bit in my class is the Electoral College and whether or not it should be changed. Here they have a link on debating the Electoral College. You've got vocabulary, you've got a couple lesson plans up here. You've also got some video clips that you can incorporate with your class. So for example, they have a video that is just specifically arguments against the Electoral College. And this is a clip that's less than 2 minutes long. So if you wanted to show just this clip, give one side of the Electoral College debate, that would be a good place to go. So they have some really nicely organized sections. They've got a different assessment here that goes along with the topic. So I really like the way that this particular C-SPAN page is arranged. And again, this is C-SPAN Campaign 2016. The next resource is the Civics page. I'm currently on the Politics and Public Policy page, and they've got some great resources down here divided into sections. They've got some specific things for the 2016 election. They do have two really good games that are interactive. They have Cast Your Vote and then also Win the White House. So if your students wanted to play a simulation to find out how they would do running for president, they have to make lots of choices, make decisions on how they're going to use their resources. This is a great game to play. One of the resources on this page that I really like is the Election Night Tracker. So if you click on that, you're going to get a PDF, and this would be a great thing to send home with your students. There's a little bit of a lesson plan there, but then there's a page you can give your students to take home. It's got the Electoral College votes, and then as the election results come in, they can also fill in the sheet here that talks about how many Electoral College votes they win as the night progresses. So this would be a great thing to take home to your students on the night of the election. Now, this particular resource does require a login. You create a free login and a password, but there's a lot of really good resources for the 2016 election here on the Civics page. The next resource I want to mention is one of my favorites. It's the website 538. This is Nate Silver's website. Nate became very famous after the 2012 election when he predicted almost every race, both Senate and each state across the country in the presidential election correct. And I like this because it's got a lot of just continually updated resources. There's a lot of really good articles on the left-hand side. Any of these would be good to pull up for specific lesson plans. But what I usually go to is the 2016 election forecast. So if you click on the map over here on the side and you look at the polls and forecasts, every day this changes. It tells you a little bit of some statistical analysis on who's going to win the election according to the polls that Nate Silver runs. And he continually runs polls. He says he runs like about 20,000 different polls to get to this. But what I like to do is you can click on each individual state. So here in Missouri, for example, it's always interesting to show students. Right now, according to the predictions of Nate Silver, Trump has about an 86% chance of winning the state of Missouri. And if we go ahead and click on that, it shows you the chances over time, which I think is really interesting because you can go back and you can say, gosh, when you look at a specific point in time, like June 28th, there was a very small difference between the two candidates. Then it got bigger, then they come back together in August, and then now it's getting a little bit closer, but it's still a huge gap there between Trump and Clinton. Some states are going to be even more interesting. So if you look at Ohio, for example, this one's really interesting. If you look at the chances over time, you can see how the lead of the two changes a couple different times, how it gets bigger, and now it's changed a couple times again, and it's almost a virtual dead heat now in the first week of October. So, again, you could talk to your students about why is this? Why would there be such a change at certain time periods? You can really dig into the numbers and look at some of the different polls. I think that one of the values of this specific site is if a history teacher wanted to team up with a math teacher and do a cross-curricular type of project, this would be a great way to mix mathematics and politics and do some comparisons and really dig into some of the numbers. So that is the site 538. The Living Room Candidate is a site that I've used for many years in my classroom. It's kind of a museum or collection of different historical TV ads from presidential elections going all the way back to 1952. Now there's a lot to explore on here. I just want to point out a couple of things. One of the things you can do is you can go to type of commercial, and I like to show the students when we talk about types of propaganda, things like that. You can definitely go and search for just a specific type of commercial. So if you wanted to show how candidates sometimes play on fear, they've got a great collection here going all the way back to the infamous Daisy ad. I always show my students that and talk a little bit about the history of that ad. You've got the ad here that Ronald Reagan did about the bear in 1984, talking about the Soviet threat. So you've got all these different ads kind of according to different types of categories: backfire, commander-in-chief, documentary. So there's a lot of really cool stuff there. If I go back to the home page, if you're looking for stuff specifically on the 2016 election, over here on the bottom, they do have a collection of ads from both candidates for 2016. And this is kind of a nice place to go and just get the ads. There's not any kind of like extra advertising or anything like that. You can bring it up and play it in full screen, but it's got a nice collection from both candidates. And then if I again go back to the home page, they also have a blog that's updated on an almost daily basis talking about the election. So sometimes there'll be interviews, video interviews. Sometimes there's specific stories or articles. So when you look at the main page, there's not a lot of references back to the 2016 election. You really want to focus down here on the bottom if you want to find stuff from 2016. Great place to have all these different ads. I also like to show my students sometimes what the ads looked like in 1952 and show them a little bit of the I Like Ike ad, and they usually think that's pretty amazing when they see the cartoon stuff saying I Like Ike. So that is the Living Room Candidate presidential campaign commercials from 1952 all the way to 2016. So the fifth and final resource I wanted to share today is the website 270 to Win. Of course, playing off the 270 electoral college votes required to win the presidential election. This is a great one to use with students because it's very clickable. So on the first page, they give kind of a overview of where they believe the polling shows that the states currently stand. But if you look on the top here, they have pundit forecasts. This is a great place to have students go because what they've done is they've taken the same map and then they've applied different types of polls, different types of news agencies that are predicting. So you can scroll down and you can pull up any of these. So for example, if you wanted to look at the ABC News presidential state rankings, you're going to see it on the exact same map, and you're going to use the same colors, and it's going to give you kind of a description of how they're breaking it down. And then if you wanted to come up, you could also see the NPR map. You can look at the CNN Electoral College map. You can go to the 538 polls. So you can look at different polling generators and see what they're coming up with. A great project for a class might be to have students look and see where there are states that maybe are different according to different polls, and maybe talk about why those might be different. So those are the ones that are listed under pundit forecast. You can also get into third-party interactive maps. Students, at least my students, are always super interested in, well, what would happen if one of the third-party candidates got enough votes? So on this map, you can actually click And you can say, let's say that a third-party candidate would happen to win Missouri. If I click it twice, then it becomes gold, and you can build them out here. So the nice thing about these 270 to win maps are they're totally clickable. So right now, it gives you kind of a range of maybe 92 electoral college votes that are kind of up in the air. So you can kind of play around with this and say, okay, what if Clinton won Nevada and Trump came over here, and if you click on it twice, it'll turn blue? Or let's say one of these states changes. Let's say that Ohio would be a Clinton state instead of a Trump state in this particular scenario, so we make it blue. So you can continually play back and forth with these different maps, and you can click on them. If you've got a whiteboard, this is a great way to have students come up and click on the whiteboard and then change different things. So I've used this one for many years, and students really like playing with the numbers on this map because it's easy to do. The other thing on this map is you can also see historical election timelines. So as we're talking about the Electoral College, sometimes we go back and look at, for example, some of the races that were really close. You can look at 1960, for example, and see how close it is. You could also go back and you can see some landslides. So if we look at Reagan's landslide in 1984, for example. So it's just kind of an interesting way to look back on different elections from different years. But overall, 270 to win is a great website to have your students kind of just play with the numbers and play a lot of what-if games according to the Electoral College. So that's 270 to win. Hopefully some of these tools will help you as you teach the 2016 election. If your students are anything like my students, they're very engaged, they're interested. I know it's been a really long process of having these candidates, and I know we talked about it a lot in the spring. We're talking a lot about it this fall, obviously, but I do feel it's important to really teach students, number one, about the mechanics and how the election process works, but then also number two, just kind of create kind of a sense of engagement for them. I definitely want my students to be engaged regardless of their political views. I want them to be a part of the process. I want them to understand that democracy is something that people need to be educated on the issues. They need to express their voice. And I think that it's really important for us to instill that in the next generation as we move forward, regardless of how people feel about specific political issues or parties. I think the biggest thing for me as a teacher is to get them involved and create a sense of responsibility that, yes, you should be a part of the election process. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube so that every time we have a new episode, it comes to your mailbox. You can also contact me via our webpage. That is www.historygeekteacher.com. And if you have any comments, definitely leave them below, or you can leave them on the webpage. But I'd be curious how you're teaching the election with your students as well. So until next time, remember, history is so much more than just a bunch of boring old dead guys. Until next time, see you later.